Dallas Cowboys all-pro offensive guard Zack Martin is officially a training camp holdout. What does that mean for the rest of the offensive line? All that and more this episode of Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same for your vehicle. So for the parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit at ebaymotors.com. And let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. We just got done listening to the Dallas Cowboys training camp presser that happens every single year. And Landon, you and I were kind of joking before the show. These have gotten worse every single year, right?
In the sense that, yeah, we're trying to get information from the state of the state of the union or state of the Cowboys press conference, whatever they call it now. It feels like, like when Garrett was here, we were getting more juicy tidbits in these conversations than we had. I mean, I obviously think back to some of the more X-rated press conferences
that we cannot mention here on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want to get demonetized. So, but yeah, it does seem like. And if this is a function of McCarthy's kind of keeping it closer to the vest kind of coaching style, I don't know, but it does seem like we're getting less and less kind of juicy information out of these situations. Jerry has been muzzled a little bit, it feels like, to a certain degree. So I still enjoy it. It's football adjacent, so I'm happy to watch it and happy to hear them talk about it, but we're not getting nearly as much great information as we got, but there were some tidbits, and there's certainly enough to talk about.
And there's some news. I still find Jerry Jones somewhat charming. Like, I know he goes on some of these long rants, but man, the guy is funny. Like, just he really is. He is. But some of the news that we got right before the presser started, heard that Zack Martin has not reported to Oxnard, as Jerry Jones calls it. So that means that he can officially be fined. Actually, he will be fined. I believe it's $50,000 a day, and that's non-negotiable. The Cowboys cannot waive that fine. They can't adjust it at all. So what's going on here?
Well, I think that Jerry is just having Zack Martin hold his room at the Biltmore so that he could sneak out and stay there at night. That was one of Jerry's funny lines, is that he sneaks out at night to go sleep at a 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear what's happening here. What's happening here is that Zack Martin signed a 6-year deal 4 years ago that at the time made him the highest paid guard. And even as the years went on, he still remained part of the group of the highest paid guards, likely because there just weren't other guards that came up for contract extensions that, could make the kind
or
of
comparable,
argument.
Right? You don't have to be better, but just comparable.
That could be comparable, right? So I think in some ways, Zack Martin for about 4 years capped the guard market.
He did,
and so then you start getting guys like Quentin
Nelson,
Quentin Nelson from the Colts, who comes in, starts breaking that. Now you've got a guy who I would say is a much less of a guard than Zack Martin, and Corey Lidstrom for the Falcons, who signs a $20 million plus contract. And now suddenly you're Zack Martin. You've got 2 years left in your deal. You're still the best guard in football, and you're being paid like $7 million less a year than guys who are good players. But I mean, you're Zack Martin. So I think that, he's looking at the situation. He's realizing that it's time for him to get some more money. He realizes that the money is about to be handed out to a whole bunch of people that were mentioned in the press conference by Jerry Jones,
which we'll get to, by the way.
Which we'll get to. So I think Zach's reading the tea leaves and saying, hey, this is probably this right now, right before all this, and all these names that also, by the way, didn't include Dak Prescott, who is also going to be up for a contract relatively soon. Zack is realizing he needs to get his money now. And if he doesn't, I think the conversations that we heard last season from certain folks, the whispers about Zack Martin retiring, I think that is his leverage. That is his threat here. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's that's honestly a sincere thing. I doubt it. But I do think that that's where Zach's going to try to create his leverage here, not only just in sitting out in training camp. He's willing to pay the money, whatever it is. I think it's something like $50,000 a day.
$50,000 a day. Yeah.
So, which, if he missed all the camp that he could, it's something like $1 million or something like that. I saw. So maybe Zach's willing to sit out for that much. I would be surprised. And I also would be surprised if the Cowboys didn't figure something out here, right? Like just to kind of make him satisfied. Look, the one aspect that we're not considering here is that what if the Cowboys actually are pretty close on a couple other contracts, and by signing some of those other contracts, they could potentially free up more money that could become available for Zack Martin. These are all things that I think we have to consider at this point. We talked about it on the show the other day, that now that everyone's kind of in the same place, they're all in the same spot, and it's a small, it's almost like camp, right? They're all kind of stuck together in their cabins. Now maybe these conversations can happen a little bit more in earnest. And again, these other contracts getting worked out, if the Cowboys are able to kind of solve one of these other contracts, maybe that's a kind of catalyst for opening up more cash to become available for Zack Martin.
The other thing that we got on the offensive line, it was actually the last question by Clarence Hill, is what's the starting offensive line going to look like at the beginning of camp? And Mike McCarthy said, we're going to start the way we finished. And what that basically means is Tyron Smith at left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center. And then the right side, I don't know. Like, I don't know, because if Zack Martin's not going to be there, and if Terrence Steele goes on the PUP list or isn't ready for camp, I have no idea what the right side is going to look like, but I do know who the three starters are going to be on that side. I just found that little note fascinating.
Don't worry, Clarence. We got the notes for you, so we can help you out here.
Yes.
I do think, I will point out that the question was phrased specifically as, like, it was phrased, who are your starting five? But I'm pretty sure that Clarence also further kind of emphasized, is Tyler Smith going to be playing left guard?
Tackle. Yeah, left
and
guard.
I think that is what McCarthy was specifically answering there, right? When he said, we'll start as we finished OTAs.
Yeah.
Meaning that, and again, I just find it funny that they can't get McCarthy to just come out and say, yeah, Tyler Smith's going to be playing left guard. Like, he had to be this, well, we'll finish as we started sort of situation.
Well, because I also don't think he wants to say he's going to be playing left guard, and then the second practice he's taking steps at left tackle, and it looks like he lied to them, right? Like,
that's probably fair too. Because
what's going to happen is Tyron Smith is going to probably be on an alternating schedule, right? He might work 2 days and then get a day off, or it might be every other day. So by just saying we're going to start with the way we finished, at least gives him a little bit of an out in case something were to change 3 days from now, right?
But before we move on to this, I think it's just worth mentioning that all of this is hingent on putting a lot on Tyler Smith's plate, right? Like, I mean, it not that he didn't handle it with aplomb last year, but now you're talking about truly having him to learn two spots, not just one, not just going back to guard, but you're going to have to, seriously work him at left tackle as well if he is the swing tackle option. So this is we're all kind of hand waving this a lot and being, thrilled that there is at least some sort of solution. But I will point out, this is putting a lot on Tyler Smith's plate. I mean, we should all applaud him if he's able to handle this, because it is a lot.
Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones also answered some questions about the changing value of running backs. Let's discuss that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with decisions about your career, a relationship, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate your life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. It's the more that you practice it, the easier it gets, the better that you get at it. It's no different than an NFL team, right? The more they practice, the better they get. The same is true for yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, And you can switch therapists at any time for absolutely any reasons, no questions asked. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers. On tomorrow's show, we're going to answer some of your Twitter questions, so make sure you guys tune in for that. But Landon, Stephen Jones had some interesting comments about the running back position because he was asked, what are your thoughts on the market changing? And he basically said, this NFL evolves a lot. We offered a deal to Tony Pollard. It didn't get done. We've paid running backs before in the past at the very top of the value. And maybe 20 years ago, his words, 20 years ago, the running back position might have been more valuable than the quarterback position. Now it's a quarterback-driven league. It felt like the Cowboys were kind of trending in this not right direction. I should clarify that. Trending in this direction. But it was nice to at least see Stephen Jones acknowledge this.
Well, what I thought was nice was that it's nice to see Stephen Jones also thinks that the 90s were 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
I thought the same thing. You mean 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, because 2003, the running back position was not more valuable than the quarterback.
No, that's when, what was it, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady?
Yeah, they were still around. So I thought that was funny. I do think that as Cowboy fans, I mean, you have to be happy that you're hearing them say this, right? Like it is happy to at least have them kind of come out and finally say, hey, we understand that the running back position is being devalued in the NFL and we're acting accordingly because, honestly, like look, let's go back to the guy that they sent to Tennessee, by the way.
I'll give you the quote. Jerry
please.
Jones said, we lost a running back a few years ago. Actually, this would have been like 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
We lost a running back to Tennessee, who was actually DeMarco Murray, who signed with the Eagles. But I mean, they knew this value. They knew this a while ago, right?
That's what I was going to say do you remember how excited and frankly thrilled we were that they even had that study remember the study that they kept on waving around about running backs at age 28, I think it was
27 or 28.
27 or 28. We were all thrilled that they had that kind of analytic study going on then. So the fact is that the Cowboys, we had been hoping we're kind of trending in this direction. It does seem that was the situation. Look, clearly the Zeke situation had a major effect on how we feel about how the Cowboys feel about running backs. But I also think that it's fair to say that the Cowboys got put into a terrible spot with this.
But they all at the same time, they also moved off of Zeke before he got to age 28. So maybe they even went back and looked at the study like, hey, maybe we could get another year or two out of him. But our studies have all shown like these guys really fall off after this point.
Yep. And so I think that's, those are all things that are in fact. But again, going as a Cowboys fan, we have to be happy that they at least are recognizing it. I tend to think that this is a good sign. I mean, I think that, the fact that the Cowboys offered Pollard a long-term contract, which is something else we should mention, and they definitely offered Schultz as well a long-term contract, means that they at least value Pollard. They understand the value of Pollard over other running backs, but obviously didn't offer him a running back contract that was, worth accepting. And I think all of that, considering the context of what happened to Saquon Barkley today, really, really has crystallized just like it is treacherous for running backs out there. And I think that the Jerry Jones, not only as the owner of the Cowboys, but, a leader amongst NFL owners, recognizes that market is floundering and is happy to let it flounder and happy to take advantage of the situation, just like all the other owners in the league at this point.
So after Steven got done talking about the running backs and the value, Jerry Jones actually said something that I thought was interesting. He said, talking with these players or whatever, I've never looked a player in the eye and had them tell me that they regret taking the money, right? Basically regret taking a long-term deal. And he could have been talking about Tony Pollard a little bit, but my gut tells me that he was actually talking about Dalton Schultz. Like, I wonder if he feels like Dalton Schultz made a big mistake by not taking the long-term deal that they offered, because they even mentioned it. Both Steven and Jerry Jones mentioned that they offered a long-term deal to Dalton Schultz, and it just didn't get done. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, honestly, I'm surprised. I was surprised that Schultz didn't re-sign with the Cowboys. Just because it felt like it wasn't going to be terribly expensive,
No.
and it turns out it wasn't. And because of the familiarity there with Dak, I mean, I felt like if anything that Schultz really had going for him as a receiver is that he was very comfortable with Dak Prescott. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I do wonder if maybe the Cowboys were surprised when Dalton turned down the deal that they offered him. The Pollard situation, I mean, honestly, I could just see them offering him a deal that is not insulting, but that is in response to the way that the running back market has been trending. And I could easily see Pollard going, no, I can't take that deal.
My guess, it was something like 3 years, 30 million with like 17 million guaranteed, right? So that would have been the franchise tag pays him, was it 10.1
or something like
million.
that. Yeah.
So give him a little bit more guaranteed, but it's still going to come in way under what 2 franchise tags would be worth unguaranteed money. And Pollard probably feels like, I'll play this year on the franchise tag. If I have another good season, I'll make 12 million on the tag and just go from there. It was pretty easy to see that one not working out, or not, both sides not coming to a long-term deal, because I think both sides were very happy to play on the tag this year. That's why he signed it right away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not a terrible deal for both of you. I mean, honestly, it's the way the market is right now. Like, your only hope is that it could bounce back, right? Like, it's not trending in the right direction, and you're probably not going to lose so much money between this year and next year. Especially if you have a good season.
Well, I think it's a heck of a deal for Pollard. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Especially considering the way things went after he signed the deal, So yeah, he lucked out by signing it now. It doesn't necessarily bode well for him betting on himself for next year, but at this point, at least he's locked in with that guaranteed money. And if he has a good season, maybe he gets similar money next year on an APY situation, a multi-year deal.
Speaking of contracts, Stephen Jones talked about the salary cap and signing some players to some longer-term deals. Let's talk about that next. All right, Landon, the last thing here that I have for us from this training camp presser, which, again, there was not a lot of news coming out of this one, but somebody asked Stephen Jones about the salary cap and if he feels good about where they sit. And he said, yeah, I feel really good about where we're at. We've structured all of our contracts in a way that gives us lots of flexibility. They feel really optimistic that they're going to get some of the long-term deals done. He even mentioned the names of the players that they're trying to get the deals done. And again, I don't think there's an order, but I think he said CeeDee, Diggs, Parsons, Steele. Those are the 4 kind of guys that we've been highlighting for a while to get, deals done. Just thought it's interesting that Stephen Jones seems very optimistic about where they are cap-wise going into the future.
Well, I mean, you could say what you want about Stephen Jones, and frankly, a lot of the things that people have said about Stephen Jones are the reason that the Cowboys are in a good cap situation to sign these guys, right? Yeah. Like, they have been frugal. They have saved money. They have rolled cap money over year after year. They've built up their chest. They've gotten to a spot where they've got, I think there's somewhere like 20th in cash spending.
Yeah, they're
currently
very low.
Very low. So they're currently in a spot where they're ready to sign a whole bunch of these guys to superstar contracts. And
actually, I think they're at a spot cash spending wise where they have to start spending more cash because they're so low.
And clearly this isn't, look, again, you say what you want about Stephen Jones, but it's not like this isn't all been planned out. They talked about how they have spreadsheets that go 3 years out for, that kind of fill out all the cap numbers. As you enter in numbers, it'll kind of place it out so you can see exactly how it all fits together. I tend to think that this is something that they clearly have been preparing for. They understood that they had basically 3 superstars drafted in the first 2 rounds of back-to-back seasons that they have to sign. And they are, they've appropriately, the good news about that situation is that they found out very quickly about those guys.
Yeah.
And because of that, they've been able to kind of roll over cash and increase the cap hits, increase the cap number, so that when it's time to actually hit these guys with their big cap hits, they can stagger them, so that they're not all hitting in 1 year. And they have the rollover cash coming in from previous seasons to kind of help pay for it. So the Cowboys are in a good situation to pay these contracts. Obviously, there's going to be a couple of monkey wrenches thrown in there that someone's going to ask way more. Yeah. Good.
Well, I
and
was
bad.
gonna say, there's of the 4 players that they mentioned, there's probably going to be one that has their play drop off a little bit, just by kind of the law of averages, right?
Yeah.
Of these players, there might be one that has an even better season. Maybe it's Micah Parsons, right? Maybe Micah
Yeah.
Parsons does win Defensive Player of the Year. He has 19 and a half sacks, and the Cowboys the number 1 defense in the league. And now they have to really adjust that number on how much they pay him. All these are good things for the Cowboys to figure out, right?
I mean, guys, just get your jaws ready off the floor when Micah Parsons asked for the first $30 million fully guaranteed defensive contract, because it's that kind of craziness
That seems low.
that's going to come up, right? I mean, that's the starting point, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if it's 35, right?
A lot of Cowboys fans don't want Dak Prescott to make $25 million. Like, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I think these are going to be huge numbers, especially Parsons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Cowboys have put themselves in a situation they're ready to pay a big time pass rusher, a big time wide receiver, and a big time cornerback, and a big time offensive tackle, while you have your big time quarterback waiting in the wings for his new contract.
I think those are the money 5 positions, right? Quarterback,
Exactly.
wide receiver, offensive tackle, pass rusher, corner, right?
They better have that money set aside, because it's going to be a lot.
The good news is the Cowboys aren't in a rush. And even Steven kind of hinted to this, like, we're going to use that franchise tag every year. It's a tool that's available to them. They're going to use it. Well, Diggs is going into the final years his contract, so he's the most likely person to get the tag. You still have CeeDee Lamb, who has this year, and he's got his 5th year option, so 2 more years under control. 3 years of Micah Parsons, and including some franchise tag options if you want to use it. The only one that's a little scary is Terrence Steele, but he's coming back from an injury. His play, he doesn't have the track record of some of those other guys, so I think he's easier to get done. And then there's Dak, who you have 2 years left of him, but you can't franchise him because of the deal that they negotiated the first time. So I think Dak is probably the one that they want to get done first before they even start to worry about some of these other deals. If I had to guess.
Well, unless they want to sign one of these guys to avoid having to use the franchise tag. Like, we've been talking about Trayvon Diggs being the most complicated and difficult one of these, right? But what if they wanted to sign him first to completely avoid having to use the franchise tag on him? And because his situation is so unique, because he's the 2nd round pick in this situation, right? And so you don't have the 5th year option. You just have less control there. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to sign him, hoping to avoid his franchise tag, as opposed to some of these other guys, just so that they can then use the franchise tag on CD if they wanted to, or on Parsons, because they only get one of those. So that's the thing that they need to do, is they probably need to sign one of CeeDee Lamb or Trayvon Diggs early, maybe Terrence Steele early, in order to kind of just make sure that they have
free up the tag.
a franchise tag to use next year.
I agree. All right, that is it for today's show. Again, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be answering your Twitter questions. And then later in the week, we're going to have actual Cowboy practice notes to talk about. So be sure to tune in for that. We are free and available on all platforms. Go check out our show on YouTube. Go follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm @Marcus_Mosier. And we'll see you guys next time.